There comes a moment, quiet, heavy, and often unexpected, when you realize you can't carry it anymore, the weight of the past, the pain no one sees, the ache that lingers, even when life looks fine on the outside. You smile, you function, but inside, something is still bleeding. And maybe you've asked yourself, why does it still hurt? Why am I still here, stuck, circling the same wound? The truth is, emotional pain doesn't stay because it's strong. It stays because we keep feeding it, with resistance, with silence, with the stories we never questioned. But what if healing wasn't about fixing everything, but about releasing what was never yours to carry in the first place? In today's episode, we dive into 10 spiritual and Stoic truths that will help you finally break the cycle. These aren't quick fixes. They're keys, quiet, powerful shifts in how you see yourself, your past, and your pain. Because your healing doesn't begin with time. It begins with truth. And that journey starts now. 1. What you resist persists. Why does the pain stay, even after the moment has passed? It's a question that echoes in the hearts of many. Something painful happens, a betrayal, a loss, a disappointment, and yet long after the event is gone, the pain remains. It shows up in our moods, our reactions, our relationships. It hides beneath smiles, behind work, inside our silence. And the more we try to push it away, the deeper it seems to dig in, as if pain feeds on our resistance, as if our fight against it gives it strength. This is the first spiritual paradox of emotional healing. The more you resist, the more it persists. Pain doesn't grow because it's powerful. It grows because we won't look it in the eye. We pretend we've moved on, while still rehearsing the story in our minds. We distract ourselves with work, entertainment, even spiritual practices, all while carrying a quiet war inside. But healing doesn't begin with running. It begins with stopping, with surrender, with facing what hurts, without trying to edit it. The Stoics understood this deeply. They never said, deny your pain. They said, don't be ruled by it. There's a difference. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke. He wasn't saying pain isn't real. He was saying pain is not eternal, unless you keep holding on to it. Think of emotional pain like a wave. If you try to hold it back, if you tense, fight, and scream against it, it crashes harder. But if you learn to breathe through it, to let it rise and fall, it loses its grip. Not because the pain is gone, but because your resistance is. And this isn't weakness, it's strength of the highest kind, because surrender is not the same as giving up. Surrender means letting go of the illusion that you can control what already happened. It means stopping the internal war, so healing can finally begin. Letting go of resistance doesn't mean saying the pain was okay. It means you're no longer willing to let it shape you. It means you don't want to spend another day chained to a moment that doesn't define you. You're not erasing your story. You're releasing the grip it has on your nervous system, your thoughts, your sense of self. And it starts with a simple truth. You don't have to fight anymore. You can breathe. You can feel. You can stop pretending it didn't hurt and still decide to live fully. Because the real enemy isn't the pain itself. It's the armor you've built around it. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is soften. So ask yourself, what pain am I still resisting? What would it feel like to stop fighting it, not to give in, but to finally let it move through me? That's where healing starts, not in resistance, but in surrender. 2. Acceptance is the beginning of peace. Have you ever spent days, months, or even years replaying a moment, trying to make it turn out differently? It's a quiet form of suffering. You lie awake thinking about what should have happened, what you should have said, how they should have treated you. And though time moves forward, part of you stays locked in the past, fighting a battle that can never be won. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And humans want control, especially when we feel powerless. But here's the truth that transforms. Peace begins the moment you stop fighting reality. Acceptance isn't agreement. It's not saying what happened was fair, right, or okay. It's simply saying, it happened, and no amount of resistance will undo it. In fact, the more you fight what already is, the more you suffer. It's like standing in the ocean, trying to push the tide back with your hands. Exhausting, futile, and ultimately damaging, not to the waves, but to you. The Stoics taught this with brutal clarity. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." In other words, focus on your response, not on the reality you cannot change. Because the moment you begin to accept what is, you free up energy that was trapped in grief, anger, denial, or blame. That energy can now be used to rebuild. We often think acceptance means we're giving up, but in truth, it means we're stepping into a deeper form of power, one rooted in clarity instead of illusion. Acceptance doesn't close the wound, but it removes the knife. And only then can healing begin. Think of a person walking through a storm, soaked, cold, miserable, because they refuse to open their umbrella. They're angry at the rain, cursing the sky, blaming the world. But the rain doesn't care. The storm doesn't stop for anger. And yet, the moment they accept, "I'm in the rain," they can take action. Open the umbrella, find shelter, move forward. Life is the same. Your peace doesn't come from changing the past. It comes from accepting that the past can no longer be changed, but the meaning you give it can. And that's the secret. Acceptance isn't passive, it's active. It's the most powerful shift you can make, because once you stop arguing with reality, you become available to build a new one. So ask yourself, what am I still resisting because I haven't accepted it? What truth am I afraid to sit with? Not because it's too painful, but because it means I have to let go of the story I've wrapped around it. Acceptance is not the end of your healing. It's the beginning. 3. Your ego holds on to hurt to stay in control. Have you ever caught yourself re-explaining the same pain to someone, or even just to yourself, long after it happened? You're not alone. That story you keep telling, that memory you replay in your mind, that pain you've carried for years, it may feel like a scar, but more often, it's a shield. A quiet way your ego stays alive, protected, and in control. Because to the ego, letting go of the pain feels like letting go of identity. And if there's one thing the ego fears more than pain, it's losing control. The ego thrives in story. It doesn't care if the story brings you peace, only that it gives you a sense of certainty. And few things offer more certainty than hurt. If I was betrayed, I'm the victim. If I was overlooked, I'm the misunderstood. If I was hurt, I deserve compensation. The ego takes this and builds identity from it. This is who I am now, the one who was wronged, the one who never got closure. And even when healing comes close, the ego hesitates. Because healing means surrender. And surrender means control is no longer the currency. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. The ego is what we use to protect ourselves from that raw confrontation with our vulnerability, with our fear, with the part of us that knows this wound is real, but it doesn't have to be permanent. But that's terrifying, isn't it? Because if we let go of the wound, who are we now? What happens to the attention, the sympathy, the structure that pain gave us? It may have been heavy, but it was familiar. And the ego would rather cling to pain than walk into the unknown without a script. Here's what's even more dangerous. The ego doesn't just keep the pain, it keeps the drama around it. Blame, justification, projection, and suddenly your life becomes a loop. Not because you're cursed, but because your identity is caught in a story that keeps feeding itself. And healing isn't just about ending the pain, it's about rewriting that story, or letting it fall away completely. The Stoics didn't speak of ego in modern terms, but they understood the trap. Seneca once said, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." The ego acts as if the pain is eternal, as if justice must be served in order for peace to be possible. But peace was never about revenge. It was about release. Here's the truth. Your soul does not need the pain to be explained. It needs it to be felt, witnessed, grieved, and then let go, quietly, without fanfare, without needing the world to acknowledge what you went through. Because your healing is not a performance. It's a return to who you were before the ego wrapped itself in the armor of pain. So how do you begin to let go when the ego wants to hold on? You start by noticing the loop, the way your mind keeps dragging you back to the same story, the way your words keep circling the same scene, the way your body tenses when someone touches the wound, even gently. And instead of feeding the story again, you pause, you breathe, you ask yourself, is this pain still happening, or is it just still echoing in me? Then, slowly, you choose to loosen your grip. You don't have to rip the story away. You just have to stop needing it to define you, because you are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not the roles your ego needed to play in order to survive. You are something deeper, quieter, wiser. And the more you listen to that voice beneath the ego, the one that whispers instead of shouts, the more you realize, I don't need this story anymore. I don't need to carry this weight just to feel real. You are already real, already worthy, already whole, even if you're still healing. So ask yourself, what pain am I still holding on to? Not because it hurts, but because it keeps me feeling in control. And what would I become if I let it go? 4. Unconscious patterns create repeated pain. Why does the same kind of pain keep showing up in your life, even when the people change? It's a haunting realization. You leave one relationship, and the next one brings the same wounds. You set boundaries at work, but find yourself once again feeling used or invisible. You promise not to fall for the same trap, but somehow you do, over and over. And at some point, you have to ask, is it really just bad luck? Or is something inside me calling this in without me even knowing it? The hard truth is this: what you don't heal, you repeat. Not because you're weak or broken, but because your unconscious mind is always searching for completion. It tries to finish the emotional story you never got to resolve. It recreates the same dynamics, the same roles, the same emotional environments, hoping this time it will end differently. But until you become conscious of the pattern, you're not healing it. You're just living inside of it. Carl Jung said it best. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's not a warning. It's a map, a way forward. Because once you recognize that the pain repeating in your life isn't random, you stop feeling cursed and start feeling curious. These unconscious patterns are formed early, in childhood, in trauma, in the moments when you were too young to understand, but old enough to feel the sting. You learned how love felt, how safety felt, how rejection felt, and your nervous system adapted. It began forming beliefs. Love means I'm not heard. Success means stress. Vulnerability means danger. And those beliefs became your emotional operating system. Now, as an adult, those same patterns run silently beneath your thoughts. They pull you toward familiar situations, even painful ones. Not because you want more pain, but because you want resolution. But here's the paradox. Until you bring awareness to the pattern, you don't get resolution. You get repetition. The Stoics may not have used the language of psychology, but they understood human nature with piercing clarity. Marcus Aurelius reflected, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception." In other words, awareness is the beginning of transformation. So how do you begin to see your patterns? Start with your triggers. The things that upset you deeply, quickly, disproportionately, they often point to unresolved pain. Notice the roles you keep playing. The rescuer, the victim, the one who always gives, the one who never speaks up. Ask yourself, where did I first learn this? Whose voice is echoing in my reaction? Because once you trace the pattern to its root, you gain power over it. You can begin to respond instead of react. And yes, this process is uncomfortable. It means admitting that part of your suffering was familiar, even safe. That part of you chose it not because it was good, but because it was known. But there's no shame in that. Only a call to deeper awareness. Only an invitation to wake up. Patterns lose their power the moment you see them clearly. When you name the cycle, when you say out loud, "This is where I abandon myself. This is where I choose silence. This is where I overgive to feel worthy." You begin to interrupt it. You begin to write a new chapter. And with time, you learn. Healing isn't just about letting go of the past. It's about changing the future by seeing the present clearly. It's about making the unconscious conscious, not all at once, but layer by layer, with compassion and courage. So pause and ask, what emotional pattern keeps repeating in my life? What pain have I accepted as normal simply because it's familiar? And what might change if I no longer played that role? You're not cursed. You're just ready to wake up. 5. Letting go. Hurts less than holding on. Why is it so hard to let go of what already let go of you? It's one of the deepest forms of quiet suffering, carrying the weight of something long gone, long broken, long finished, yet still alive inside your mind like it just happened. A relationship that ended years ago, a conversation that never came, a version of life you hoped for but never received. And though it's over, it still owns a part of you, not because it has power, but because you're still holding on. Letting go is often misunderstood. People think it means forgetting, denying, pretending you're unaffected. But real letting go is something far more powerful. It's not passive. It's not indifference. It's a conscious decision to stop feeding what's already complete, to stop tying your worth, your future, and your identity to something that cannot come back, at least not in the way you hoped. Here's the hard truth. Holding on doesn't preserve love. It preserves suffering. It keeps the wound open. Every time you replay what they said, what they didn't do, how it could have gone, you reopen the cut. But the past doesn't hurt you. Your attachment to how the past should have been is what keeps the pain alive. The Stoics were blunt about this. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from the events themselves, but from our judgment about them. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You can't control the storm that already passed, but you can stop standing in the rain long after the sky has cleared. Letting go is not forgetting what happened. It's choosing not to bleed for it anymore. It's choosing freedom over familiarity. Because the truth is, yes, letting go hurts, but clinging hurts more. You just don't always notice it. Because pain disguised as loyalty becomes part of your identity. You convince yourself, if I let go, it means I didn't care. If I let go, it means they win. But that's the ego speaking. The soul doesn't keep score. It seeks peace, not victory. And peace comes the moment you stop arguing with what is. So how do you let go when everything in you is still holding on? You begin by naming the cost. Not just emotional, but energetic, spiritual. Ask yourself, what has this memory stolen from me? How many mornings have I spent grieving what isn't coming back? How many moments have I missed by reliving one that's already gone? Because the mind clings to pain, hoping it will change something. But the only thing it changes is you. Next, you allow the grief. Letting go is not about rushing to feel better. It's about being honest, raw, human. You loved, you lost, you hoped. It didn't happen. You get to mourn that. You get to cry. You get to feel the absence. But you don't have to let the absence define you. And eventually, you make a quiet decision. I deserve to be free. Not because they said sorry, not because it all made sense, but because you're done carrying something that doesn't carry you, because you've got a future waiting, and it needs your hands empty to hold it. Letting go isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of real love. The kind you give to yourself when you finally stop begging for closure and start creating peace. So ask yourself, what am I still holding on to long after it stopped holding me? And what might open up in my life if I let go, not just with my mind, but with my heart, my body, and my breath? Because sometimes the greatest act of strength is not holding on tighter, it's knowing when to finally release. 6. Your identity is not your wound. Who are you without your pain? It's a question that startles, that pauses the breath. Because for many of us, our deepest wounds have been with us for so long, they've become part of who we think we are. The betrayal, the abandonment, the failure, the shame. We carry them not just as memories, but as identity. We introduce ourselves to the world not with our voice, but with our scars. And the longer we carry that story, the more we start to believe it. This pain is me. This struggle defines me. This hurt is my truth. But it isn't. You are not what broke you. You are what you rebuild, with quiet strength, daily effort, and radical self-compassion. The wound is a chapter. It's not the whole book. It's easy to forget this, especially in a culture that rewards survival stories more than inner peace. We admire people who rise from pain, but we rarely talk about the danger of making that pain your home, of wearing your trauma as a badge, as proof you lived. But true healing means learning to let go of the identity you built around the hurt, not because it wasn't real, but because it's no longer needed. The ego clings to the wound because it offers structure. If I'm the betrayed, I don't have to trust again. If I'm the victim, I don't have to risk growth. If I'm the one who was left, I don't have to face the fear of being chosen. Pain becomes armor, heavy but protective. And we wear it so long, we forget what it's like to move freely. But the Stoics remind us, we are not our emotions. We are not our circumstances. We are not the story the past tries to tell us. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." This isn't denial. It's a reclaiming of authorship. You don't have to let the past write your present. Carl Jung, too, challenged us to confront our shadows, not to identify with them, but to integrate them, to know the wound without becoming it, to say, yes, that happened. Yes, it shaped me, but it does not own me. Healing begins when you stop needing the pain to justify your strength. You can be powerful without being broken. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it begins in small moments. The moment you tell your story without letting it steal your light. The moment you notice your triggers and instead of reacting, you breathe. The moment you realize you don't have to perform your pain to be seen, you can simply be. And that's enough. So how do you release the identity built around a wound? You start by separating what happened to you from who you are. One is an event, the other is a choice. You begin to speak about the pain in past tense, not because you're erasing it, but because you're no longer living in it. You stop using your suffering as a reason to hold back, and start using your strength as a reason to move forward. And then, most powerfully, you forgive yourself for the ways you coped, for the times you didn't know better, for the years spent wrapped in pain because it felt safer than healing. You forgive not because you were wrong, but because you're ready to be free. Your identity is not your wound. Your identity is the love you give, the peace you cultivate, the truth you live, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So ask yourself, if I wasn't defined by my pain, who would I be? Because that person, quiet, grounded, whole, already exists. They're just waiting for you to remember. 7. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly felt anxious for no reason, or heard a certain tone of voice and your stomach tightened without warning? Maybe it wasn't fear, maybe it was memory, not in your mind, but in your body. Emotional pain doesn't live only in thought, it lives in breath, posture, tension, and stillness. The mind may rationalize, reframe, or even forget, but the body, it remembers. Every unspoken truth, every suppressed emotion, every time you forced yourself to be okay. It all stays somewhere, quietly waiting for permission to be heard. And until it's acknowledged, it shapes your experience from the inside out. The body is not separate from the soul. It's the vessel through which your truth tries to speak when words fall short. That heaviness in your chest, that clenching in your jaw, that fatigue you can't explain, they are all signs, not of weakness, but of intelligence, of wisdom, of unfinished emotional business calling you home. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." But what's rarely said is that the unconscious doesn't only live in thoughts, it lives in flesh, in breath, in the nervous system. And healing often begins not with a breakthrough in thinking, but with a softening in the body. We've been taught to intellectualize pain, to explain it, analyze it, fix it with logic, but trauma doesn't live in the intellect. It lives in the body's reaction, the instinct to shut down, to run, to freeze, and if you want to release it, You have to come back into the body, not escape it. The Stoics may not have spoken of somatic memory, but they lived through it. They trained the body through discipline, not punishment, to build a state of calm readiness, emotional neutrality, physical presence. Seneca believed that a calm mind depends on a balanced body. The body must be trained, not broken, he wrote, and kept strong, not enslaved to pleasure or fear. In this he echoed something modern science now affirms, that the body must be included in any true healing. So what does it mean to listen to the body? It means noticing where you hold tension, becoming aware of the places that ache not because of overuse, but because of unspoken stories. It means asking, what is this tightness trying to say? It means letting your tears rise without shame, letting your breath deepen without resistance. It means practicing stillness, not as a performance, but as an act of return. Because when the body finally feels safe enough to release, the soul exhales too. You don't have to relive every wound to heal it, but you do have to feel it, fully, gently, with presence. That might look like movement, dance, breathwork, or simply sitting in silence with your hand over your heart. It might mean releasing the shame you've carried in your shoulders, or the grief trapped in your hips. It might mean resting, truly resting, without guilt. Because here's what no one tells you. Sometimes your body is healing while your mind is still trying to catch up, and that's okay. Let it. So ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me that my mind has been too busy or too afraid to hear? You don't need more answers. You need more presence, more permission to feel, and to trust that healing is not just possible, it's already happening from the inside out. 8. Feelings are not forever. Have you ever been so overwhelmed by emotion that you believed it would never end? Maybe it was heartbreak that left you breathless, or a wave of shame that made your chest feel like it was collapsing, or a sudden burst of anger that you couldn't explain, let alone control. In those moments, the emotion feels like everything. Like it owns your body, your mind, your future. And yet, you're still here, breathing, living. The storm passed. You survived. This is the truth we often forget in our darkest hours. Feelings are real, but they are not permanent. They rise, they crash, they move through you like weather, intense, unpredictable, sometimes violent, but always passing. And yet when we're caught inside them, we convince ourselves, this is who I am now. This is my life. This feeling will never leave. That's the illusion of pain. It distorts time. It shrinks your perspective. It tricks you into believing that what you feel in this moment will define every moment that follows. But the Stoics remind us to hold feelings with gentle detachment. Marcus Aurelius, in the quiet of his private journals, wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Even your heaviest emotions can be transformed, not by suppressing them, but by understanding their nature. You are not the feeling. You are the one experiencing the feeling. Just like the sky isn't the storm, it's the vastness that holds the storm. That still remains when the thunder fades. You are that vastness." But here's the problem. Most of us were never taught to feel our emotions. We were taught to label them, judge them, manage them, or worse, hide them. And so we panic when they rise. We try to escape instead of listen. But emotions, when ignored, don't disappear. They deepen. And the only way out is through. So how do you move through a powerful emotion without letting it define you? Start by naming it without shame. This is sadness. This is fear. This is grief. Let it be what it is, a wave, not a life sentence. Then breathe into it. Sit with it. Speak to it if you need to. I see you. I won't run from you, but I won't worship you either. Because when you stop resisting the emotion, you give it permission to flow, and flowing is how it releases. Sometimes, the most powerful act is simply staying still while the feeling moves through, not fixing it, not escaping it, just witnessing it with presence, with compassion, with the quiet knowing that this too will pass. You won't always feel broken. You won't always feel lost. You won't always carry this weight. And even if the emotion returns, as emotions often do, you'll meet it differently, stronger, softer, wiser, because each time you survive a wave, you remember something essential. You are the sky. And no storm, no matter how fierce, is stronger than you. So ask yourself, what am I feeling right now that I've convinced myself is forever? And what would happen if I simply let it pass through me without judgment? You are not your sadness. You are not your rage. You are not your fear. You are the one who watches and waits and rises again. 9. Silence is where real healing begins. Have you ever sat in complete silence and felt uncomfortable? Not because of the quiet itself, but because of what started to surface in it. In a world that worships noise, silence feels unnatural. We're constantly fed content, conversation, distraction, all carefully designed to keep us looking outward. Because if we stop, if we turn down the volume, if we sit long enough in stillness, we're left with something far more confronting than chaos. Ourselves. But silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is where the truth finally has room to speak. Real healing doesn't begin in the noise, not in the advice of others, not in the endless talking about our pain, not in the scrolling or the self-help frenzy. It begins in stillness, in the quiet space where nothing is demanded from you, and everything hidden begins to rise. Gently, painfully, honestly. It's in that silence where the old stories lose their grip, where the body speaks without words, and where the soul whispers what you've been too distracted to hear. The Stoics lived in silence, not as an escape, but as a tool. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," and silence is where that suffering is revealed for what it is. Often a story we've repeated so many times, we forgot it's no longer true. In silence you can see it clearly. The fear isn't real. The shame isn't yours. The pain isn't who you are. But here's why most people avoid silence. Because it demands honesty. You can't hide from yourself in silence. The mask slips. The distractions dissolve. And whatever has been waiting in the shadows, the grief, the resentment, the unprocessed loss, it rises, not to destroy you, but to be held, to be felt, to be released. Carl Jung understood this as well. He believed that silence was a portal to the unconscious, that the quiet mind becomes the doorway to what needs to be healed, and that facing the silence is the beginning of true individuation, of becoming whole. He once said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living." Not because solitude is easy, but because in it we finally meet the parts of us we've abandoned. So how do you make space for that kind of silence? Not by escaping to the mountains or becoming a monk, but by choosing every day to step away from noise, even for 10 minutes, even for one. No phone, no music, no answers. just breathe, just awareness, just a willingness to sit and feel what rises. And in that stillness, healing begins, not all at once, but in small, sacred waves. A sudden exhale, a tear you didn't know you were holding, a thought that finally feels complete. That is the medicine silence offers, the kind that no one else can give you. So ask yourself, when was the last time I gave myself silence, not as punishment, but as a gift? And what would I hear if I truly listened? You don't need to be louder to be healed. You need to be still. And in that stillness, something ancient wakes up, the part of you that knows you've been whole all along. 10. Pain is not a punishment. It's a portal. What if your pain wasn't a curse, but a doorway? Most of us are taught to see pain as something to escape, to numb, to silence, as if it has no purpose except to make us suffer. But what if the very thing you've been trying to avoid, the ache in your chest, the loss that split your world, the regret that won't let you sleep, wasn't there to punish you, but to awaken you? Pain doesn't arrive without reason. It comes when something old needs to die, when something in you is ready to grow, even if you're not. It pulls you into discomfort not to destroy you, but to show you who you've been, what you've accepted, and most importantly, what you're capable of becoming. The Stoics never saw pain as the enemy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just as nature takes every obstacle, every impediment, and works around it, turns it to its purposes, incorporates it into itself, so too can a rational being turn each setback into raw material and use it to achieve its goal." That is the invitation of pain, to transform, to be reborn, not in spite of what hurt you, but because of it. And yet, so often we ask the wrong question. Why me? Why did I go through this? Why did they leave? Why did I lose everything I thought I needed? But that question keeps you trapped in victimhood. It keeps you circling the event, stuck in a loop of blame and confusion. The better question is, what now? What will I do with this pain? What will I create from it? What will I no longer tolerate because of it? Because if you let it, pain sharpens you. It clears away what no longer serves you. It humbles the ego and strengthens the soul. It forces you to choose between collapsing and evolving. Carl Jung believed pain was essential for psychological transformation. He wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. That's because pain strips away the illusions about yourself, about others, about the world. And in that raw, exposed place, you begin to see clearly. You begin to feel what is real. And from there, you begin again, not as who you were, but as who you were meant to become." The truth is, pain is part of the initiation into deeper life, into wisdom, into love that doesn't control, and truth that doesn't bend. It's not comfortable, it's not linear, and it doesn't come with guarantees. But if you go through it with open eyes and a steady heart, pain doesn't leave you broken. It leaves you aware. So if you're in pain right now, if something has ended, or someone has left, or your world has fallen apart, ask yourself, what part of me is being asked to grow? What is this pain trying to teach me that comfort never could? You don't have to be grateful for the pain, but you can choose to walk through it with purpose. You can let it change you, not into someone colder, but into someone truer, stronger, braver, more awake. Because pain is not the end of your story, it's the doorway to a deeper one. And now, here you are, on the other side of the storm, not untouched, not unchanged, but more awake than you've ever been. What you've just explored are not lessons in theory. They're invitations, each one a quiet key meant to unlock something that's already within you, because you were never broken, never weak, never incapable of healing. You were simply carrying pain that no one taught you how to put down. But now, you know that what you resist persists, and that surrender is not defeat, but freedom. You know that acceptance is not weakness, but a doorway to peace. You know that your ego will fight to hold on to pain, but your soul is ready to let it go. You know that your patterns are not fate, they are maps back to consciousness. You know that letting go is not giving up, it's choosing yourself. You know that your identity is not your wound, it's your response to it. You know that your body remembers, and it deserves gentleness. You know that feelings pass, and that you are stronger than the storm. You know that silence is not empty, it's where the truth finally breathes. And you know now, pain is not a punishment, it's a portal to rebirth, to expansion, to the version of you that no longer needs to be hardened to be powerful, just honest. So now, the only question that matters is this: what will you do with what you now see? Don't wait for the perfect moment to begin healing. Don't wait for closure, for apology, for someone else to give you permission to move forward. Begin now, in silence, in stillness, in strength. If this episode moved something in you, take a moment to breathe it in. Share it with someone who's carrying a pain they don't know how to release. Subscribe to join a community that's walking this path with intention, with depth, and with clarity. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to forget. You're not here to stay in pain. You're here to rise through it.